Christmas morning arrived with the smell of cinnamon rolls and the sound of my mother's forced cheerfulness echoing through the house. I sat on the living room floor surrounded by wrapping paper, watching my younger sister Betrayal open gift after gift with theatrical enthusiasm. Then my parents exchanged a look, one of those meaningful glances that always made my stomach drop, and my father reached behind the tree for a small velvet box. "This one's special, sweetheart," he said, handing it to Betrayal with a beam that could have lit the entire room. She opened it slowly, dramatically, making sure everyone was watching. Inside, nestled against white satin, was a single brass key. "It's Grandma's house," my mother announced, her voice thick with emotion. "We're giving it to you, Betrayal. You'll take such good care of it." My grandmother's house. The beautiful old Victorian I'd spent 2 entire summers restoring after she died. The place where I'd scraped wallpaper until my hands bled, where I'd refinished hardwood floors on my hands and knees, where I'd lovingly restored every window and doorframe because I'd loved her and wanted to honor her memory. My project. My work. My grandmother's legacy. Given to my sister who'd never lifted a finger to help. Why her? The words came out choked, barely audible. My mother reached over and patted my arm like I was a child having a tantrum. "You'll understand someday, Mila." The room erupted in soft laughter. My aunts, my uncles, even my cousins smiling like I was being ridiculous. Like my confusion was adorable. Betrayal clutched the key to her chest and whispered just loud enough for me to hear. "You didn't actually think they'd give it to you, did you?" My chest tightened so much I couldn't breathe. I stood up, mumbled something about needing air, and walked outside onto the porch. The cold December morning hit my face like a slap, but I welcomed it. Anything was better than sitting in that room watching my family celebrate my erasure. I stood there shaking, trying to process what had just happened. My grandmother had trusted me with that house. She'd told me years before she died that she knew I'd take care of it properly, that I understood what it meant to preserve something with history and love. And now it belonged to Betrayal, who only cared about Instagram posts and whether things were trendy. Through the window I could hear voices. My parents had come into the kitchen, right on the other side of the wall where I stood hidden. "She'll get over it," my father said, his voice carrying clearly through the old walls. "She always does." My mother sighed. "If we gave it to her, Betrayal would have had a complete meltdown. You know how she gets." "Exactly. Mila is the stable one. She doesn't need assets to survive like Betrayal does." The words sliced through me like knives. I wasn't the stable one. I was the one they took for granted. Before I could process what I just heard, the front door burst open and Betrayal stormed out, phone pressed to her ear, her voice sharp with excitement. "Yes, call the contractor immediately. We start demolition next week." She paused, listening. "I don't care what the original features are. I want modern, open concept. All of it. Demolition. My grandmother's house. The one I'd spent months carefully restoring to her exact specifications." I grabbed her arm. "What are you talking about?" "Demolition." She pulled away, rolling her eyes. "Ugh, Mila, stop being so dramatic. The house needs to be modernized. Nobody wants to live in some dusty old relic." I ran back inside, my heart pounding, and found my parents still in the kitchen looking entirely too comfortable. "You're letting her demolish Grandma's house?" My voice came out louder than I intended. "Everything I restored. Everything Grandma loved." My mother waved a dismissive hand. "We've decided the house needs modernization. Betrayal deserves a place that reflects her style. She's the one who'll be living there. Grandma trusted me with that house." I was yelling now, not caring who heard. "She told me." My father cut me off sharply. "You're making this into a big drama, Mila. The decision is made. Grow up." Betrayal appeared in the doorway, smiling that smug smile I'd grown to hate. "Construction contract is already signed." "Sorry." She held up her phone, showing me a PDF. "Dad co-signed yesterday." I couldn't stay in that house another second. I stormed upstairs to my old childhood bedroom, the one I still kept a few things in because some pathetic part of me still considered this home. As I was grabbing my jacket, I noticed one of my dresser drawers was slightly open. I hadn't left it that way. Someone had been going through my things. Curious and angry, I pulled it open fully. Inside, mixed with old notebooks and photos, were renovation receipts from my grandmother's house, ones I'd saved showing my name as the primary on all the contractor invoices. Beneath those, I found something that made my blood run cold. A handwritten note from my grandmother, dated just weeks before she died. For Mila. 'Cause she cares. Because she understands what matters. My hands trembled as I kept digging. At the very bottom, tucked into an old envelope, was a photocopy of what looked like a legal document. Part of a will. Page 3 of 4, it said at the bottom. But it was incomplete. The signatures were missing. And there were references to provisions I'd never heard about, specifically regarding Mila's stewardship of the Larkwood property. The Larkwood property. That was my grandmother's house. Why had my mother been rifling through my drawers? Why did she have a partial copy of Grandma's will? And where were the other pages? I photographed everything with my phone and left without saying goodbye to anyone. The next morning, I drove directly to the office of Harrison Kemp, the elderly attorney who'd handled my grandmother's estate. I'd met him only briefly during probate, but he'd seemed kind and professional. His office was small and cluttered with legal books, the kind of place that felt like it hadn't changed in 40 years. He looked up when I entered, his eyes crinkling in recognition. Mila Rowan. I remember you. Your grandmother spoke very highly of you. I slid the photocopied will page across his desk. I found this in my mother's things. Can you tell me what this is? He picked it up, studied it for a long moment, then removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. This appears to be page 3 of 4 from your grandmother's will. Where are the other pages? He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Your parents told me that Paige was lost in a house fire shortly before probate. We had to proceed with the incomplete document. Lost in a fire. I leaned forward. Mr. Kemp, there was no fire. My parents lied to you. His face went very still. Then, slowly, he stood up and walked to a filing cabinet in the corner. He pulled out an old accordion folder and brought it back to his desk. I'm going to show you something, he said quietly. Something I probably should have questioned years ago. He pulled out a sealed manila envelope. Written across it in faded ink. Rowan Estate. Do not release without both parents present. This has been sitting here since your grandmother died. Your parents never came to claim it. With shaking hands, Mr. Kemp opened the sealed envelope. Inside was a letter, written in my grandmother's careful handwriting, dated the week before she passed away. I read it aloud, my voice breaking. To whom it may concern, my granddaughter Mila has invested significant time, resources, and love into restoring my home at Larkwood Avenue. It is my express wish that she be consulted on all decisions regarding this property until she turns 30 years old. Her dedication has proven her commitment to preserving family legacy. Mr. Kemp was reading over my shoulder. This letter was meant to be read during probate. It's dated and notarized. It's a legally binding expression of intent. Why wasn't it? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Your parents said all documentation was complete. They were the executors, so I trusted them. He looked genuinely pained. Miss Rowan, this should have been presented during probate. The fact that it was withheld. Is that illegal? At minimum, it's unethical. At worst. He paused. It could constitute fraud against the estate. My grandmother had tried to protect me. She'd known my parents would favor Betrayal. She'd put safeguards in place. And my parents had deliberately hidden them. The betrayal settled into my bones like ice. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about my family systematically erasing my grandmother's wishes and my rights. What do I do? Asked. Mr. Kemp straightened in his chair. We find the rest of the documentation. And then we correct this. I went straight back to my parents' house, the letter clutched in my hand. I didn't knock. I used my key and walked directly into the kitchen where I knew they'd be having their morning coffee. My father stiffened when he saw me. Mila, we weren't expecting you. You withheld documents from probate. I slammed the letter down on the table. Grandma wanted me consulted on every decision about the house. This is notarized. This is legally binding. And you hid it. My mother's face went pale, but she recovered quickly. Her voice dropped to that careful, controlled tone she used when she was about to gaslight me. We did what was best for the family. That house was never practical for you. You're always moving around, never settled. Brielle needs stability. I spent 2 years making that house beautiful again. Grandma trusted me. My father stood up, his voice hard. You went digging where you shouldn't have. This is family business, Mila, and you're making it ugly. Family business. I laughed bitterly. You mean the business of stealing my inheritance? My mother's face twisted. She reached across the table, grabbed the letter, and before I could stop her, tore it in half. I stared at the pieces floating to the floor, too shocked to move. That's when I noticed Brielle standing in the doorway, phone raised, recording everything. She was laughing, actually laughing. This meltdown is absolute gold, she said, still filming. So dramatic. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in my car when my phone started buzzing with notifications. Brielle had posted the video to social media with a caption. When your sister can't handle that life isn't fair, face with tears of joy #family drama entitled much. The video had been edited to make me look completely unhinged, cutting out the context, cutting out my parents' responses, just showing me yelling about the house and the letter. Comments flooded in from relatives and family friends. Mila always was overdramatic. Girl needs therapy, not a house. Imagine being jealous of your own sister on Christmas. My phone buzzed with a DM from my cousin Simone, someone I hadn't talked to in years. You should see what your mom posted in the family group chat. What family group chat? The one you're not in. She sent me screenshots. My stomach turned as I read through them. My mother. Mila has always been too emotional to handle real responsibility. This reaction proves we made the right decision. My father. If she had the house, she'd probably ruin it. She has no sense of practical value. Brielle. Honestly, she's single and basic. She doesn't need assets. I have a whole future to build. Each message was a punch to the gut. They'd been talking about me like this behind my back. Laughing at me. Pitying me. Dismissing me. Then another message from Simone. Actually, I think your grandmother left you something else. Something they don't know about. Called Simone immediately. What do you mean she left me something else? I was helping clean out the attic at Grandma's house last year, before your parents took it over. I found a box with your name on it. Your mom told me to leave it alone, but I remember where it was. Can you get back in there? I have a key. Your mom gave it to me when I was doing the cleaning. I don't think she ever asked for it back. We met at my grandmother's house that evening. It felt wrong sneaking into a place that should have been mine anyway, but I was past caring about what felt right according to my family's twisted rules. The attic was exactly as I remembered. Dusty, cluttered with old furniture and boxes of memories. Simone led me to a corner where an antique jewelry box sat on a shelf. This is it. It has your name carved on the bottom. I turned it over. Sure enough. Mila, carved in my grandmother's handwriting. Inside was a small brass key, different from the one Brielle had received. Attached to it was a note. Keep this safe. When the time comes, it will protect what's yours. Beneath the key was a slip of paper with numbers written on it. It took me a moment to recognize what I was looking at. A storage locker number and facility address. My grandmother had left me a storage locker. One my parents clearly didn't know about. We need to go there, I said. Now. The storage facility was across town, open 24 hours. We arrived just after 9 p.m., the key clutched in my hand like a talisman. Unit 217 was at the end of a long, fluorescent-lit hallway. The key fit perfectly. The door rolled up with a metallic screech. Inside were a dozen boxes, all labeled in my grandmother's handwriting. Mila, important. I pulled the first box open with shaking hands. Inside were photographs of my grandmother's house before I'd started renovations, proving the condition it had been in, proving the work I'd done. Dozens of before and after shots. The next box contained receipts and contractor invoices, all with my name as the primary contact and payer. Thousands of dollars I'd spent restoring that house. But it was the third box that changed everything. Inside was a leather binder labeled, Legal Protections, Larkwood Property. I opened it and found document after document, copies of permits, property restrictions, legal filings. And right on top, a letter from my grandmother's attorney addressed to the city planning office. It stated clearly, any structural changes to the Larkwood property require written authorization from Mila Rowan until such time as she reaches her 30th birthday. This restriction is filed with the property deed. My hands trembled. This meant the demolition permit Betrayal and my parents had signed was illegal. They couldn't legally touch that house without my permission. At the bottom of the binder was another list. If anyone attempts to override Mila's decisions regarding this property, contact these individuals immediately. 5 names. 5 people I didn't recognize. 5 potential allies my grandmother had carefully chosen. She'd built me an entire network of protection. And my parents had no idea it existed. The first name on the list was Marcus Torrance, retired architect. I called him the next morning, half expecting no answer. Instead, a warm voice picked up on the second ring. Marcus Torrance speaking. Mr. Torrance, my name is Mila Rowan. I'm calling about my grandmother, Eleanor Rowan. There was a pause, then his voice softened. Mila, Eleanor told me about you. She said if you ever called, it meant something had gone wrong. I explained everything, the Christmas gift, the demolition plans, the hidden documents. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, your grandmother came to me 3 years ago. She was worried your parents favored your sister too much. She asked me to help protect the house for you. I agreed immediately. That house is an architectural treasure. What did she ask you to do? I helped her file the legal restrictions on renovations. I also have copies of the original architectural plans and her written intent that you be the primary guardian of the property. She wanted to ensure you couldn't be overridden. Relief flooded through me. Would you be willing to help me now? Absolutely. In fact, there's something else you need to know. He paused. Your grandmother also filed something with the city archives. Documents that would prevent any major renovations without your explicit consent. You should retrieve those records as soon as possible. Where? City Hall, Department of Records. Ask for the Larkwood property files. And Mila. She loved you very much. She wanted to protect what mattered to you. I thanked him and hung up, feeling something I hadn't felt since Christmas morning. Hope. The City Hall Department of Records was a maze of bureaucracy and filing cabinets. I explained what I needed to a tired-looking clerk who disappeared into a back room for 20 minutes. When she returned, she carried a sealed folder marked with my grandmother's name and the Larkwood property address. This was filed 6 months before Mrs. Rowan passed, the clerk explained. It's unusual. She specifically requested that all renovation permits for this address require a secondary signature from you until you turn 30. I opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside was a notarized document stating exactly what the clerk had said, along with copies of the property deed showing the restriction had been officially recorded. This means no one can get a demolition permit without my authorization, I said slowly. That's correct. Any permit filed without your signature would be invalid. My heart raced. Can you check if anyone has filed for permits on this property recently? She typed into her computer, frowned, and pulled up a file. There's a demolition permit here, filed last week. Signed by. She squinted at the screen. Betrayal Rowan and Thomas Rowan. That's my sister and father. But I never signed anything. Then the permit is legally invalid. She looked at me seriously. Miss Rowan, if construction proceeds without the proper authorization, that's a violation of city code. The property owner could face significant fines. Can you flag this permit as invalid? I can and will. Immediately. She made a note in her system. I'm also going to send a formal notice to the contractor listed on the permit. They'll be ordered to cease all work. As I turned to leave, the clerk called after me. Miss Rowan. One more thing. Someone tried to remove this restriction from city records last week. The request was denied, but you should know someone attempted it. My blood ran cold. Who? The request came from a Thomas Rowan. My father had tried to erase the legal protections, and he'd failed. Armed with the city documents, I drove directly to the Larkwood house. I could see construction vehicles already parked in the driveway. Workers were unloading equipment, preparing to begin demolition. Brielle stood on the front porch directing them, clipboard in hand, looking entirely too pleased with herself. I marched up to the foreman, a burly man in a hard hat. You need to stop immediately. He looked annoyed. Lady, we have a permit. We start work today. No, you don't. I handed him the city documents. This permit is invalid. The property has legal restrictions requiring my authorization for any structural changes. I'm Mila Rowan, and I did not authorize this demolition. The foreman studied the documents, his expression shifting from annoyed to concerned. He pulled out his phone and made a call, presumably to his office or the permit office. After a brief, terse conversation, he turned to his crew. Pack it up. We're not touching this property. Brielle's face went from confusion to rage in seconds. What? Well, you can't just leave. Ma'am, the permit is invalid. We can't legally work here. He gestured to his team. Let's go. This is my house. Brielle screamed. Not according to the law, the foreman replied calmly. He looked at me. You'll need to resolve this with the city before any work can proceed. I stayed perfectly calm, watching the workers pack up their equipment. Brielle was shrieking now, calling my father, calling my mother, calling her lawyer friends for help that wouldn't come. That's when my mother's car pulled into the driveway. My mother stepped out of her car, her face already contorted with anger. What is going on here? The demolition is illegal, I said simply, holding up the documents. Grandma filed restrictions with the city. No major renovations can happen without my written consent until I'm 30. The permit you and Dad filed is void. A small crowd had gathered, neighbors curious about the commotion, workers waiting to leave, Brielle still screaming into her phone. My mother snatched the documents from my hand and read through them, her face paling with each line. This can't be legal. It is. Call the city if you don't believe me. Better yet, call the contractor's office. They've already been notified. Brielle was on the verge of a complete meltdown. This is my house. Mom, do something. Brielle, be quiet. My mother's voice was sharp, panicked. She pulled out her phone and called my father. We have a problem. Come to the Larkwood house immediately. The foreman approached me one more time. Ma'am, I'm sorry about the confusion. We'll need proper authorization before we return. Good luck sorting this out. The trucks pulled away, leaving just my family standing in the driveway. Brielle was crying now, real tears of frustration and thwarted entitlement. My father's car pulled up 15 minutes later. He got out, took one look at the situation, and his face hardened. He pulled me aside roughly. If you continue this, he hissed low enough that only I could hear, we will cut you off financially. Completely. Think about that before you make any more trouble. I smiled sadly. You've never supported me financially, Dad. I've been independent since college. You have no leverage over me. His face went blank as he realized I was right. 4 years, they'd given everything to Brielle while I'd worked and saved and built my own life. They'd never had financial control over me. They just assumed I'd never challenge them anyway. My phone rang. It was Mr. Kemp, the attorney. "Miss Rowan, you need to come to my office immediately. I found the rest of the will pages." I left my parents standing in the driveway and drove straight to Mr. Kemp's office. He was waiting for me, 3 additional pages spread across his desk. "I went through every archived file we have," he explained. "These pages were misfiled, deliberately I suspect. They were tucked into an unrelated estate folder." I picked up the final page with shaking hands. It was the signature page, dated and notarized. But more importantly, it contained additional provisions I'd never heard about. "The Larkwood house is entrusted to Mila Rowan until she reaches age 30, I read aloud. "At that time, she may choose to keep, sell, or transfer the property at her sole discretion. No interference from other family members shall be permitted. This provision supersedes any verbal or written gifts made to other parties." Mr. Kemp nodded. "Your grandmother's intentions are crystal clear. The house was never your parents' to give away. It's been yours all along, held in trust until your 30th birthday. I'm 28, which means you have full authority to make decisions about it for the next 2 years. And after that, it's yours permanently. Can my parents challenge this? They could try, but they'd lose. These are legally binding documents that were improperly withheld from probate. A court would not look favorably on that." He paused. "Miss Rowan, there's something else. Something I think you need to know." He pulled out another file, this one marked with my grandmother's name and the notation, "property income." "Your grandmother had been renting out the house for several years before she died. The rental income was supposed to go to you as the property's designated trustee. According to these records, that income has continued to be collected even after her death." My stomach dropped. "By who?" "Your parents. As executors of the estate, they've been receiving the rental checks. But according to the will, that money should have gone to you." "How much money are we talking about?" He slid a financial summary across the desk. My eyes widened at the number. "Over $40,000 collected in the 3 years since my grandmother died. $40,000 that was legally mine. $40,000 my parents had stolen." I sat in stunned silence as Mr. Kemp explained the full scope of what my parents had done. "The rental property was managed by Clearwater Property Management. They've been sending monthly checks to your parents' address. Checks made out to you as the designated trustee. Your parents have been endorsing and depositing them. That's forgery." "Yes. It's also fraud against the estate and potentially theft by conversion, depending on how the prosecutor would want to handle it." He looked at me seriously. "Miss Rowan, you would have every right to press criminal charges." My hands trembled as I looked at the stack of photocopied checks, each one bearing my name with my father's forged signature beneath it. Dozens of them. Years of theft, documented in black and white. What would happen if I did press charges? Your father would almost certainly face criminal prosecution. Depending on the amount and the circumstances, he could face jail time. Your mother, as a co-conspirator, could also be charged. I closed my eyes, trying to process the magnitude of this decision. Part of me, the part that had been hurt and betrayed and dismissed my whole life, wanted them to face consequences. Wanted them to understand what they'd done. But another part of me, the part my grandmother had raised to be better than them, knew that jail time would destroy whatever was left of my family. It would devastate Betrayal despite everything. It would be a public scandal. "I need time to think about this," I said quietly. Mr. Kemp nodded. "Take whatever time you need. But Miss Rowan, I want you to know that you have options. You have leverage. And you have rights that have been systematically violated for years." I took copies of everything and left his office feeling both empowered and exhausted. I sat in my car for a long time, thinking about what I wanted out of this situation. Finally, I pulled out my phone and sent a text to my parents. "Meet me at the Larkwood house tomorrow at noon. Both of you. We need to talk." They arrived exactly at noon, looking nervous and defensive. Betrayal tried to come with them, but I stopped her at the door. "Family only," I said. And right now, you're not the family member whose opinion matters. She sputtered, but my father told her to wait in the car. This conversation was going to be hard enough without her drama. We sat in my grandmother's living room, the room I'd restored so carefully, with the original wallpaper I'd uncovered and preserved, the fireplace I'd painstakingly cleaned and repaired. Every detail was a reminder of what I'd built and what they'd tried to take. I laid everything out on the coffee table between us. The complete will. The city documents. The rental income records. The forged checks. "This is what Grandma actually wanted," I said, pointing to the will. "The house was always meant to be mine. Not as a gift, but as a trust until I turned 30. You knew that, and you hid it." My mother started to speak, but I held up my hand. "I'm not finished. You've been collecting rental income that legally belongs to me. $40,000 to be exact. You forged my signature on every check. That's a felony." My father's face had gone gray. "Mila, we can explain." "No, can't. There's no explanation that makes this okay." I pulled out one more document, a legal filing I'd prepared that morning with Mr. Kemp's help. "This is a formal complaint for fraud and theft. I can file it with the police today if I choose to." My mother gasped. "You wouldn't." "Why wouldn't I? You stole from me. You lied to me. You gave away my inheritance to my sister and then tried to demolish the house I restored with my own money and time." I looked at both of them. "Give me one good reason why I shouldn't send you to jail." Silence filled the room. My father stared at the floor. My mother was crying, but I felt nothing. No sympathy. No guilt. Just cold, hard determination. "However," I continued, "I'm going to give you one chance. One opportunity to make this right without destroying yourselves completely." They both looked up, hope flickering in their eyes. "Here are my terms." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden my grandmother had loved. When I turned back, my voice was steady and absolute. "First, you will transfer full, uncontested ownership of this house to me immediately. No more gifts to Brielle. No more claims. The house is mine, legally and permanently, starting today." My father opened his mouth to protest, but I continued. "Second, you will repay every cent of the rental income you stole, $40,000, in a lump sum within 30 days. I don't care how you get it. Sell something. Take a loan. That's not my problem." My mother was shaking her head. "We don't have that kind of money. You had it when you were spending it on Brielle's tuition, her car, her vacations. You'll find it." I pulled out another document. "I have a repayment agreement prepared. You'll both sign it, and it will be notarized. If you default, I file the criminal complaint immediately. Third," I continued, my voice getting colder, "you will post a public statement on social media retracting everything you said about me. Every lie, every dismissal, every cruel comment. You'll apologize publicly and acknowledge that Grandma wanted me to have this house." "Mila, that's humiliating," my father started. "Not as humiliating as what you did to me on Christmas morning in front of the entire family." I stared at him until he looked away. "And finally, you'll explain to Brielle that she never had any claim to this house. That it was never yours to give her. That she needs to find her own path instead of living off stolen property." I placed the documents on the table. "These are my terms. Non-negotiable. You can sign them now, or I'll walk straight to the police station and file charges. Your choice." My parents exchanged glances. My mother was crying harder now. My father looked defeated in a way I'd never seen. "We need to read through these," he said quietly. "You have 1 hour. Check my watch. I'll be in the garden. When I come back, you'll either sign or you'll be facing criminal prosecution. Decide." I walked outside and sat on my grandmother's bench, the one under the old oak tree where she used to read to me when I was young. My hands were shaking from adrenaline, but I felt strangely calm. This was the right thing. Not revenge but justice. Not cruelty but accountability. After 45 minutes, my father came outside. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past hour. We'll sign, he said quietly. All of it. But Mila, we never meant to hurt you. Yes, you did. I stood up. Maybe not consciously, but you chose Betrayal over me at every turn. You dismissed my work, my feelings, my rights. You stole from me and gave everything to her. That was a choice. We thought she needed it more. She needed you to teach her that the world doesn't revolve around her. Instead, you taught me that I don't matter unless I fight for every scrap of respect I get. I walked past him toward the house. Let's get this done. Inside, the documents were signed. My mother could barely look at me. Betrayal was crying in the car, having somehow sensed that everything had fallen apart. Mr. Kemp had arranged to meet us at his office to notarize everything. The whole process took less than an hour. When it was done, I owned the Larkwood house outright. The repayment agreement was legally binding. The public apology was scheduled to post tomorrow. As my parents left Mr. Kemp's office, my mother turned back one more time. You've destroyed this family. No, I said calmly. You did that when you chose to lie and steal. I just refused to accept it anymore. She left without another word. Mr. Kemp handed me the final copies of everything. Well done, Miss Rowan. You handled that with remarkable composure. I had a good teacher, I said, thinking of my grandmother. She taught me that dignity matters more than revenge. Over the next few weeks, my family's carefully constructed facade crumbled in ways I never orchestrated but couldn't help but notice. The public apology my parents posted went exactly as expected. Awkward, forced, and transparent. Extended family members who'd sided with them began asking uncomfortable questions. The ones who'd commented on Betrayal's video calling me dramatic suddenly went quiet. Betrayal's social media presence imploded. People who'd initially supported her started posting things like, "Wait, she was trying to demolish a house that wasn't even hers." And, "Imagine being gifted stolen property and acting like you deserved it." She deleted the original video, but screenshots had already spread everywhere. Her comments section filled with criticism. She went private, then deleted most of her accounts entirely. My parents stopped attending family gatherings. The aunts and uncles who'd laughed at me on Christmas morning now avoided them. Whispers spread through our extended family about the forged checks, the stolen inheritance, the lies. But I didn't spread those stories. I didn't have to. The truth had a way of getting out on its own. Relatives I hadn't heard from in years started reaching out with apologies. I should have questioned things. "I'm sorry I laughed. You deserved better." I accepted their apologies but kept my distance. Some bridges once burned aren't worth rebuilding. Meanwhile, Betrayal's tantrums escalated. She blamed everyone but herself, me for ruining her gift, my parents for not protecting her, the contractors for abandoning the project. My parents paid the $40,000 in 2 installments, clearly liquidating assets to meet the deadline. I deposited the money into a dedicated account for the house's ongoing restoration and maintenance. 3 weeks after everything was settled, my father called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Mila." His voice sounded hoarse, older. "Your mother and I. We've been talking. We want to know if there's any way to repair this. To move forward as a family." I sat in my grandmother's kitchen, my kitchen now, and looked around at all the work I'd done. The carefully restored cabinets. The vintage fixtures I'd hunted down. The tile work I'd laid myself. "Dad, you had my entire life to treat me like I mattered. You chose not to. Over and over again you chose Betrayal. We made mistakes. You made choices. There's a difference." Paused, choosing my words carefully. "I don't hate you. I'm not trying to punish you. But I also don't trust you. And I don't think I ever will again. So that's it. You're cutting us off. I'm creating boundaries. Healthy ones. Ones I should have established years ago." Took a breath. "If you and Mom want to work on becoming better people, I support that. But I'm not going to be your emotional punching bag while you figure it out. What about Betrayal? She's devastated. Brielle is 25 years old. It's time she learned that actions have consequences and that the world doesn't owe her anything just because she wants it. There was a long silence. Finally, my father said quietly, "Your grandmother would be proud of you." "I know," I replied. "That's the only opinion that matters to me anymore." We hung up. I felt no victory, no satisfaction. Just a quiet sense of closure. A week later, I received a certified letter from Mr. Kemp's office. Inside was a small envelope with my name on it in my grandmother's handwriting. Attached was a note from the attorney. This was the final document in the sealed file. "Your grandmother requested it be delivered to you only after all legal matters regarding the property were resolved. Congratulations on fighting for what was yours." I opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a short letter dated just days before my grandmother died. "My dearest Mila, if you're reading this, it means my fears came true. Your parents favored Brielle in ways that hurt you, and you had to fight for what was rightfully yours. I'm sorry I couldn't prevent that. I tried to protect you with legal documents and restrictions, but I know that doesn't heal the emotional wounds. I want you to know, you were always the grandchild who understood what mattered. Not things, not status, but love, care, and preservation of what's meaningful. That's why I trusted you with my house and my legacy. You are strong, Mila. Stronger than you know. Don't let anyone, not even your parents, convince you that your strength is a flaw or that your independence makes you less deserving of love. Build the life they said you didn't need. Build it with the same care you showed my house. Build it on your own terms. And know that I loved you completely without conditions, and I'm proud of the woman you've become. Always, Grandma." I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Not sad tears, grateful ones. My grandmother had seen me, had valued me, had known exactly what would happen and had tried to protect me anyway. She'd given me more than a house. She'd given me validation, protection, and the tools to stand up for myself. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a frame on my mantel, right above the fireplace I'd restored with my own hands. Over the next few months, I threw myself into completing the restoration work my grandmother and I had started together. Every room received attention. Every detail was honored. I hired Marcus Torrance, the architect my grandmother had trusted, to help me with the final touches. He worked with reverence for the house's history, never suggesting we modernize or update, just preserve and enhance. "Your grandmother had excellent taste," he told me one afternoon as we reviewed paint samples. "And she chose the right person to continue her legacy." The house became exactly what it was supposed to be, a beautiful blend of historical charm and comfortable livability. Not trendy, not Instagram perfect, just genuine. I moved in permanently, leaving my small apartment behind. Walking through these rooms felt like coming home in a way I'd never experienced with my family. Word spread in the historic preservation community about the restoration work. A local magazine asked to feature the house. I agreed on the condition that they mention my grandmother's original vision and the 2 years of work we'd done together before she died. The article was beautiful, full of before and after photos showing not just the physical transformation, but the love and care that went into every decision. Several people reached out asking if I'd consult on their own restoration projects. I started a small side business doing exactly that, helping others preserve their family homes with the same respect my grandmother had taught me. 6 months after Christmas, I hosted a small gathering at the house. Not family. I invited Marcus, Mr. Kemp, Simone, and a few friends I'd made through the restoration community. People who appreciated what the house represented. We ate dinner in the restored dining room, and afterward I gave a toast. This house represents something my grandmother understood better than anyone. That legacy isn't about giving people things they haven't earned. It's about protecting what matters and trusting the right people to carry it forward. Marcus raised his glass. To Eleanor, who had the wisdom to see beyond favorites and recognize true dedication. We drank to that. Later, as I was cleaning up, Simone pulled me aside. "Have you heard about Brielle?" I hesitated. No. Should I have? She's been posting again. Still playing the victim. But nobody's buying it anymore. Most of her comments are people telling her to grow up. That's sad, I said, and I meant it. Not because I felt sorry for her, but because she was so trapped in her own entitlement that she couldn't see a way out. Your parents aren't doing much better. From what I hear, they're pretty isolated. Most of the family has distanced themselves. I nodded slowly. That's their consequence to live with, not mine to fix. You really don't feel guilty? Simone asked, genuinely curious. No, I feel sad that it came to this. But I don't feel guilty for standing up for myself. Grandma taught me that I was worth fighting for. It just took me a long time to believe her. A year after that terrible Christmas morning, I stood in my grandmother's garden. My garden now, and felt something I hadn't experienced in my family home in decades. Peace. The house was mine. The legacy was secure. The restoration was complete. And most importantly, I'd learned to value myself the way my grandmother always had. I'd received one final gift from her estate, the one Mr. Kemp mentioned in his last letter. It was a small box containing her wedding ring and one last note. You were always the strong one, Mila. Not because you never broke, but because you knew how to rebuild. Build the life they said you didn't need. I believe in you. I wore the ring every day. A reminder that I came from strength even when my immediate family tried to convince me otherwise. My parents had called a few times over the months, always awkward, always surface level. We had brief, polite conversations. I didn't hate them. I just didn't need them anymore. Brielle sent a message once, months after everything settled. Do you think we can ever fix this? I'd responded simply. I think you need to figure out who you are without everything being handed to you. When you do, maybe we can talk. She never replied. My life had become exactly what my grandmother had envisioned. Built on my own terms, with my own efforts, surrounded by people who valued me for who I was rather than what I could provide. I stood in the garden, looking back at the house that had become my home, and smiled. They tried to erase me. They tried to steal my inheritance and my legacy. They tried to make me feel like I didn't deserve what I'd earned. But I'd fought back with grace, documentation, and boundaries. And I'd won. Not through cruelty or revenge, but through standing up for myself and refusing to accept less than I deserved. My grandmother had taught me that strength wasn't about being loud or aggressive. It was about knowing your worth and protecting it calmly and firmly. She'd given me the tools. I'd done the work. And now I had something they could never take away. A home I'd built myself, a legacy I'd earned, and the unshakable knowledge that I was worth fighting for. Justice wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was quiet, dignified, and absolute. And that was the sweetest victory of all.